Have you ever wondered why history's most powerful men seem to possess a different kind of energy, a magnetic presence that set them apart? Why some can move mountains with their will, while others remain trapped in endless cycles of mediocrity? The answer may lay in nature's best-kept secret, the transmutation of sexual energy. 90 days ago, he began a journey that would completely transform my understanding of desire, power, and purpose. This wasn't simply sexual abstinence. It was an alchemy of the soul, a process of turning the lead of prima urges into the gold of conscious achievement. What I discovered in those 3 months revolutionized not only my sex life, but my entire existence. We live in a society that teaches us to view sexual desire as something to be immediately satisfied, an impulse to be met without question or reflection. We're constantly bombarded with stimuli that arouse our libido, and then we're sold the quickest solution, instant gratification, through compulsive masturbation. But what if I told you that this very energy you waste in 5 minutes of empty pleasure is the exact fuel that history's great achievers used to build empires, create immortal works, and reach extraordinary levels of success? Napoleon Hill, in his studies of the most successful men of his time, discovered something revolutionary. They all possessed highly developed sexual energy. But here's the secret. They had learned to transmute it, not to repress it, not to deny it, but to redirect this vital force towards higher purposes. Hill called this sexual transmutation, and according to him, it was the 13th and most powerful principle of success. But what happens when we decided to stop wasting this sacred energy? What occurs when we consciously choose to transform the fire of desire into the fuel of achievement? My 90-day journey revealed truths that our hypersexualized society prefers to keep hidden. At first, it was like waking from a deep trance. He realized how conditioned he was to seek immediate relief for any emotional tension or discomfort. Masturbation had become my preferred escape mechanism, a safety valve that kept me trapped in a vicious cycle of wasted energy and diluted purpose. It was as if he was constantly leaking my life, forced through a hole in the bottom of a bucket. The first few days were disturbingly revealing. He discovered that my relationship with sexual pleasure was deeply intertwined with dysfunctional emotional patterns. Every time he felt anxiety, boredom, loneliness, or frustration, my first impulse was to seek sexual gratification as a form of emotional anesthesia. It was a socially acceptable drug, a silent addiction that drained not only my physical energy, but my mental clarity, my determination, and my connection to higher purposes. During the first week, I faced what ancient mystics called the dark night of the soul. My mind, deprived of its habitual escape mechanism, was forced to confront the true causes of my existential discomfort. I realized I was using masturbation as a way to avoid confronting myself, as a way to escape the responsibility of building a truly meaningful life. Sexual energy, when not wasted, begins to build up like steam in a pressure cooker. But contrary to what many think, this pressure doesn't need to be released through immediate gratification. It can be transmuted, redirected, transformed into other forms of creative and fulfilling expression. It's as if nature gave us an infinitely renewable energy system, but we're constantly wasting this precious resource. In the second week, something extraordinary began to happen. My mind became clearer, sharper. Ideas that had previously seemed nebulous began to take shape with crystalline precision. Projects he had procrastinated on for months suddenly seemed urgent and achievable. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes, revealing a world of possibilities that had previously remained hidden by the fog of constant gratification. What Napoleon Hill discovered, and what modern science is beginning to validate, is that sexual energy is much more than a biological impulse for reproduction. It's a fundamental creative force, an energy that, when transmuted, can fuel any human endeavor. Stories great artists, inventors, leaders, and visionaries intuitively understood this principle and learned to channel their libido into their creations. During the first month, my experience was like that of an ancient warrior learning to master a sacred sword. Sexual energy is a powerful force, potentially destructive when misdirected, but extraordinarily creative when channeled consciously. Every time I felt the urge to masturbate, I asked myself, where can I direct this energy? What project can I fuel with this force? What dream can I energize with this power? The answer always came in the form of creative action. Writing, staging, exercising, meditating, working on personal projects. Every activity that had previously seemed to require Herculean effort suddenly became natural and enjoyable. It was as if I had discovered an inexhaustible source of inner motivation. But the transformation wasn't just mental or creative. My body began to change subtly but profoundly. My posture became straighter, my movements more decisive, my voice deeper and more resonant. It was as if every cell in my being was being energized by a force that had previously been constantly wasted. The personal magnetism that Hill described in his studies began to manifest in a tangible way. In the second month, the journey deepened into psychological and spiritual territory. He realized that compulsive masturbation wasn't just a matter of physical habit, but a symptom of deeper emotional patterns. It was a form of self-medication for unhealed emotional wounds, a way of avoiding true intimacy with myself and others. Has The Alchemy of Desire, a 90-day journey when harnessed and transmuted, sexual energy acts as a catalyst for the individuation process Carl Jung described. It's as if this vital force propels us not only toward biological reproduction, but toward the creative regeneration of ourselves into a more elevated and fulfilled version. Each consciously suppressed sexual urge transforms into creative drive. Each wave of desire becomes a wave of inspiration. During this period, something remarkable happened in my social and professional life. People began reacting differently to my presence. There was a magnetic quality to my energy that attracted opportunities, relationships, and experiences that had previously seemed unattainable. It was as if I was radiating a different frequency, a vibration communicating personal power and self-mastery without uttering a word. At this point in my journey, I'd like to pause and share something important with you. If this narrative is resonating with you, if you're feeling an inner calling to begin your own transmutation journey, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Because what I'm about to share in the next few minutes are the deepest secrets I've uncovered. Specific techniques, daily practices, and revolutionary insights that can completely transform your relationship with desire and personal power. This information isn't just entertainment. It's a roadmap to an extraordinary version of yourself that's waiting to emerge. Click the subscribe button now, because your transformative journey can begin today. The third and final month of the experience was when the true revelations began to manifest. The transmuted sexual energy had become a constant and stable force in my life, fueling not only my creativity and productivity, but also my capacity for spiritual connection and self-awareness. It was as if I had finally learned to consciously and intentionally operate my own energetic system. One of the most profound discoveries was realizing that sexual energy is, at its core, pure life force. It's the force nature uses to create new life, but when consciously transmuted, it becomes the force we use to create new reality. Every great evolutionary leap in human history has been driven by individuals who learned to channel this primal energy for transcendent purposes. During this period, my understanding of masculinity and personal power was completely reshaped. I discovered that true masculine power doesn't reside in the capacity for immediate gratification, but in the capacity for conscious transmutation. The truly powerful man isn't the one who satisfies all his urges, but the one who understands, honors, and transforms them into higher expressions of his nature. Compulsive masturbation had kept me in a state of perpetual emotional adolescence, always seeking immediate pleasure, always avoiding the responsibility of building something meaningful with my life force. Sexual transmutation forced me to grow, to mature, to become truly responsible for the power I carry within me. At the end of 90 days, what impressed me most weren't the external changes, though they were evident and transformative, but the fundamental shift in my identity. I had become the kind of man I had always admired, disciplined without being rigid, powerful without being domineering, sexual without being compulsive. It was as if I had finally integrated the primitive and elevated aspects of my masculine nature. The journey taught me that sexual desire isn't the enemy of spirituality or success, it's its fuel. We don't need to repress our sexual nature, we need to elevate it. We don't need to deny our libido, we need to transmute it. The same force that drives us toward reproduction can drive us toward extraordinary achievement in any area of life. He discovered that transmuted sexual energy manifests in surprising ways: heightened personal charisma, extraordinary mental clarity, increased physical stamina, explosive creativity, inexplicable magnetism, unshakable confidence, and a profound sense of purpose and direction. It was like having access to a superpower that had always been available, but that I had never learned to use. More than that, he realized that compulsive masturbation wasn't just an isolated habit, but part of a larger pattern of how I related to pleasure, satisfaction, and fulfillment. By breaking that specific pattern, other limiting patterns in my life also began to dissolve. It was as if I had found a master key that unlocked multiple areas of personal growth. The experience also taught me about the difference between superficial pleasure and deep satisfaction. Masturbation offered momentary pleasure, followed by existential emptiness. Sexual transmutation offered lasting satisfaction that deepened over time. It was the difference between eating sugar and nourishing the body with real food. During the 90 days, he confronted what Jung would call the integration of the shadow. All the aspects of my sexuality that I had repressed or projected onto others were brought into consciousness to be understood and integrated. He realized that much of what we call Uncontrollable sexual urges are actually distorted expressions of deeper emotional and spiritual needs. Sexual energy, when misunderstood, becomes compulsive because it's trying to fill voids that cannot be filled through physical gratification. We're trying to satisfy spiritual hunger with carnal food, existential thirst with momentary pleasure. Sexual transmutation teaches us to directly nourish these deeper needs through creation, purpose, and authentic connection. By the end of the journey, he understood that I had uncovered one of the best-kept secrets of human fulfillment. Sexual energy is literally our life force. It's the energy nature gave us to create life. When we learn to use this energy consciously, we can create not only new biological life, but new life in any area we choose: financial, creative, spiritual, relational. 90 days taught me we're far more powerful than we imagine, but also far more responsible. Every time we squander our sexual energy through compulsive gratification, we're choosing mediocrity over excellence, distraction over focus, superficial pleasure over profound fulfillment. It's a choice we make moment to moment, impulse to impulse. Sexual transmutation isn't about suppressing or denying our sexual nature. It's about elevating it. It's acknowledging that we are simultaneously sexual and spiritual beings, and that these two dimensions needn't be in conflict. In fact, when consciously integrated, they mutually enhance each other. What most impressed me was discovering that true virility doesn't reside in the capacity for constant sexual gratification, but in the capacity for constant sexual gratification, but in the capacity for conscious transmutation. A truly virile man is one who understands and directs his sexual force, not one who is driven by it. It's the difference between being a slave to one's impulses and being the master of one's own vital energy. During those 3 months, he also understood the wisdom behind the ancient practices of temporary celibacy found in virtually every spiritual tradition worldwide. It wasn't about sexual denial, but about the accumulation and transmutation of energy for higher purposes. Monks, yogis, and mystics of all traditions intuitively understood that sexual energy, when conserved and redirected, becomes spiritual energy. The experience also revolutionized my understanding of relationships and intimacy. By ceasing to squander my sexual energy through compulsive masturbation, I developed a far greater capacity for presence and genuine connection with others. It was as if, by stopping my compulsive self-relationship, I developed the capacity to relate to others more authentically and deeply. I realized that compulsive masturbation had kept me in a kind of narcissistic relationship with myself, using my own body as an object of immediate gratification. By breaking that pattern, I developed a more mature and conscious relationship with my own sexuality, which naturally translated into a greater capacity for true intimacy with others. At the end of the 90 days, the most significant change wasn't external, but internal. I had developed what the ancients call self-mastery, not the rigid repression of natural impulses, but the conscious ability to choose how and when to express my sexual energy. It was true freedom, not being bound to either compulsive gratification or neurotic repression. This journey taught me that we live in a culture that teaches us to fear our own vital energy. We're conditioned to believe that our sexual impulses are uncontrollable, that they must be immediately satisfied to avoid frustration or repression. But this is a narrative that keeps us weak, dependent on external gratification, and disconnected from our true power. The truth, he discovered, is the exact opposite. Our sexual energy is our greatest source of personal power when we learn to direct it consciously. It's the fuel for any great achievement, the force behind all extraordinary creation, the secret of all genuine personal magnetism. The 90 days also revealed to me the difference between willpower and true power. Willpower is tension, effort, a struggle against oneself. True power is alignment, flow, the conscious direction of natural energy. Sexual transmutation doesn't require Herculean willpower. It requires understanding, acceptance, and intelligent redirection. Concluding this transformative journey, I understand that I had discovered not just a self-development technique, but a fundamental principle of how energy works in the universe. The same force that moves the teas, that makes plants grow towards the sun, that propels all creation forward, exists within us as sexual energy. When we learn to consciously work with this force, we become co-creators of our own reality. The 90-day experience, without masturbation, wasn't about deprivation or repression. It was about discovery and realization. I discovered that I carry within me an inexhaustible source of creative power, and that this power becomes available when I stop squandering it through compulsive gratification. It was like discovering I had been carrying a treasure my whole life, but only using it to buy cheap trinkets. Today, looking back, I realized that those 90 days marked the beginning of a new phase in my personal evolution. Not because I stopped masturbating, but because I learned to consciously relate to one of the most powerful forces in human existence. I learned that I am the guardian of a sacred energy, and that I have the responsibility and privilege of directing it towards purposes worthy of its magnitude.